The question this week is, many sincere spiritual teachers offer profound teachings and practices for the benefit of many. These teachers are respectful and compassionate by meeting us where we are and encouraging our independent thought and advice and action. Would you agree as a spiritual teacher yourself that this is the case? Many sincere spiritual teachers offer profound teachings and practices for the benefit of many. These teachers are respectful and compassionate by meeting us where we are and encouraging our independent thought and action. Would you agree as a spiritual teacher yourself that this is the case? It's a complex question, or a seemingly simple but somehow complex question. It is it hinges really on who we are. The question, perhaps inherent in the question, is, are we who we are, or are we someone else? And speaking for myself, I know that when I'm with somebody or with a group of people or counselling or sharing self-exploration, then unless there has been a transformation on the personal level into authenticity, into the core of one's being, we have to say more or less with compassion and with kindness that the person before us is not who they really are. There's a potential and a capacity for becoming oneself, which is pre-spiritual, which is merely psychological. And I say merely in the sense that it takes us back to childhood and the history of the creation of a sense of self that is somehow compromised, that is not genuine, that is adaptive and temporary, or should be temporary, in relationship to the early life conditions. Now I know for myself, and you may want to consider it for yourself, I learned very desperately and very hard to be what it was I was expected to become. There was little use in standing up emotionally or physically in terms of preferences or spontaneity or responsiveness of any kind in a way that didn't somehow define someone, in my case as Richard. You have a similar experience, I suggest. The environment demands that you are increasingly definite, defined, labelled. So I remember when I was very young, the adults around me declaring my preferences based on a very small sample of experience, and my inner response was to consider the untruth of what it was that they were saying, and yet I capitulated, I conformed, you see. All of this, by the time of puberty came, it was as if for me the world became grey. It became grey because I was becoming grey under the weight of the labelling and the definitions. And I worked with people now for many years, and it seems to me that those who come to me have a similar experience, a version of my autobiography something similar. Because the human being, of course, is expansive beyond measure. We are much more than we can possibly be defined or labelled to be, to become. And this person before us then is a miracle, a mystery, something, an event in the world you will never understand in the rational, intellectual mind's way of understanding something or pulling the mystery out of it, so that it lies as a kind of dead thing before you, and yet in your growing up, in your being raised as a boy or a girl, labels took over, definitions took over for everyone's convenience, and they will tend to supplant the mystery of being, of the human being. So you say teachers are respectful, compassionate by meeting us where we are and encouraging independent thought and action, and it's true up to a point. Yes, of course. I mean, if regardless of whether somebody's authentic or inauthentic, meet them where they are, try and make some sense of it, respond, extend openness and acceptance to people where they are. It's absolutely important. However, as a spiritual teacher, or as even a psychospiritual psychotherapist, somebody who explores with another deeply in the transpersonal realms, there may well come a time when that, what you call it, encouraging independent thought and action, or even meeting somebody where they are, may really be called into question. Is it really where they are? And is the thought and action really independent? Is it genuine? Is it self-motivated? You see, it becomes unclear, or rather it becomes possibly not what it seems to be. And then, as a teacher or a therapist, you may be called upon a challenge. And when you do challenge, it may work sometimes. At other times it may not work, but it may at least instill some grain of questioning in the person you're with, who thinks, well, hang on, am I authentic? Is this for real? Is this who I really am? Is this thought or action or feeling coming from an authentic basis? So your question is important. Your question is complex. But I would point out that in profound teachings and practices, being respectful and compassionate to others doesn't involve making some hallowed, or an unchallengeable case for the independent appearance, expression or manifestation of the individual. You may be called, as the individual may be called, to pull that down, to strip that down, to release attachment to that so-called individuality in order to find the genuine, authentic being within.